I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. So as we say the various prayers, really think about what you're saying and visualize accordingly. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of active offering, actual and mentally transformed. I confess all my destructive actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until cyclic existence ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate all the virtues of myself and others to the Great Awakening. Then we give the entire universe and everything beautiful in it, everything we're attached to in it. We offer this freely, with delight, to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and at the same time have a request them to receive teachings and to receive their guidance. Is ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, for land, sun, and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. The objects of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, friends, enemies, and strangers, I offer these with the sense of loss. Please accept them with pleasure and inspire me to be free from the three poisonous attitudes. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. And then imagine that a duplicate replica of the Buddha in front comes and sits on top of your head, facing the same way as you. And as you make requests to the merit field, think that the Buddha is making request on your behalf too. Glorious and precious root Guru, sit upon the lotus and moon seat on my crown, guiding me with your great kindness. Bestow upon me the attainments of your body, speech, and mind, the eyes through whom the vast scriptures are seen, supreme doors for the fortunate who would cross over to spiritual freedom, illuminators whose wise means vibrate with compassion. To the entire line of spiritual mentors I make request. And then as we recite the Buddhist mantra, think that there's a Buddha on top of the head of each and every sentient being around you, and that light streams from the Buddha's heart into you, into all the other sentient beings. And sometimes it's white light purifying your negative karmas and negativities in general, and sometimes it's golden light, bringing with it the realizations of the entire path. Tayata Muni Muni Maha Muni Asoha. 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 And then think, the fact that I and all other sentient beings have been born in samsara and are endlessly subjected to intense dukkha is due to our having failed to attain a superior realization of the great potential of freedom and fortune and of the difficulty of attaining them. Guru Deity, please inspire me and all sentient beings so that we may attain a superior realization of the great potential of freedom and fortune and the difficulty of attaining them. The opportunity to practice the perfect teaching is called freedom. The presence of all inner and outer favorable conditions for practice is called fortune. In brief, the life with freedom and fortune that we have attained carries great potential because on its basis we can create the causes of a higher rebirth with an excellent body and resources, generosity, ethical, discipline, fortitude, and so on. In particular, on its basis, we can generate the 3 kinds of ethical codes, and in a short life of this degenerate age, easily accomplish Buddhahood. May I not waste in useless activities this life complete with freedom and fortune that is difficult to attain and carries great potential. And instead, may I take full advantage of it. Guru Deity, please inspire me to be able to do so. In response to your requesting the Guru Deity, 5-colored light and nectar stream from all parts of his body. So this is the Buddha in front of you. The light and nectar stream into you through the crown of your head. The light and nectar absorb into your mind and body and into those of all the sentient beings around you, purifying all negativities and obscurations accumulated since beginningless time. So, meditate like this, really imagine that light coming and purifying, and really feel the purification of yourself and others. And the light and nectar especially purifies all illness, spirit interferences, negativities, and obscurations that interfere with attaining a superior realization of the great potential of freedom and fortune. Your body becomes translucent, the nature of light. And all your good qualities, lifespan, merit, and so forth expand and increase. Think in particular that a superior realization of the great potential of freedom and fortune has arisen in your mind stream and in the mind streams of others. So visualize and meditate like this. And then let's think that for the benefit of all the sentient beings who have been kind to us and will continue to be kind to us, that given that we have this precious human life, let's use it wisely and generate the bodhicitta and follow the path to full awakening. And let's have that as our motivation for being together today. So today we're going to talk about precious human life, but before we do, there were two things I wanted to talk about first. Okay. So one, thank you. One is the importance of studying the Lamrim. Yeah, the Lamrim, sometimes it's translated as gradual path to awakening, or steps on the path to awakening, or stages of the path to awakening. Lamrim is the Tibetan and it's shorter, so we often call it that. But it's referring to this whole system of teachings that explain like all the steps that we have to contemplate and gain an understanding of in order to reach Buddhahood. And it's an incredible way to systematize all the teachings, because when the Buddha was alive, he wandered in northern India and he taught so many different groups of people, and he always taught what was suitable for a particular group at that time. But so he said different things to different groups in different orders. Some people he talked about the beginning of the path, some people the middle, some people the end, because of, their level of mind. And so for us coming into it, we may not have any idea of what to practice at the beginning, middle, and later portions. And so the great sages, starting with Lama Atisha, who was Indian, and then going into Tibet with many of the great sages of the four traditions, they systematized all these teachings and made a structure. Yeah, so that it's very suitable for everybody to practice. So it's brought into what's called the 3 levels of practitioner: the initial level, the medium level, the advanced level. And each level of practitioner has a specific motivation. They have meditations they do to generate that motivation, and then meditations that they do to actualize the meaning of that motivation. Yeah. And when you do the Lamrim meditations, it's very important not just to go through the different points and think about them like you're thinking about some kind of intellectual topic, but really apply them to your life. Yeah. So His Holiness, he wrote the book. Well, I did the book. I put together the book Guided Meditations on the Path to Enlightenment, and His Holiness wrote the foreword for the book. So I want to read to you what he said, because this will kind of emphasize the importance of the Lamrim and why we're studying it. So I read the whole thing. But he says, as I often tell people, the analytical meditations on the points of the Lamrim will transform our minds and enable us to become more compassionate and wise. I encourage people to do these meditations as part of their daily practice. Okay? So there it is, straight from His Holiness, about the importance of these meditations, because they do transform our minds. In Tibetan Buddhism, we have many kinds of meditation, including visualizations, mantra recitation, and so on. And some people like those meditations with the visualization and so on. But my own experience is, when I have a problem, it's the Lamrim meditations that give me the solution to my problem. Yeah, because whenever we have a problem, it has to do with our own incorrect way of thinking. Our wrong views, our afflictive emotions. Yeah. And so the Lamrim, the different meditations in the Lamrim, all counteract these wrong views and these afflictive emotions. So if we learn these meditations and learn which ones to do when we're in a certain mood, or when a certain kind of view or attitude is prominent in our mind, then we really have an incredible medicine chest for dealing with our mind. Yeah. And I really can't emphasize this enough, because when you're angry, sometimes you can't just sit there and visualize and chant mantra and do anything with your anger. We have to really look at the anger and, okay, why am I angry? Is this a wrong view or a correct view? Yeah, is it a reliable cognizer, or is it, some kind of screwed up emotion? Yeah, and if it's a mixed up emotion, why is that way of thinking incorrect? And what is the proper way to view that situation, instead of viewing it in the way whereby anger arises? Okay, so you really have to do this kind of analysis on our own mind. Otherwise, we get angry and we just say to ourselves, oh, I'm a Buddhist, I'm not supposed to be angry, and shove the anger down without really understanding why it is an afflictive emotion and why it is based on an incorrect way of thinking. Okay? So it's, if we really want to do something with these emotions and the wrong views and so on, we need to have the tools, so that we can see why they're incorrect and transform our mind into the correct way of viewing something, or the correct way of thinking, a correct way of thinking about them. Okay? Otherwise, we go around, we visualize this, we visualize that, but then somebody looks at us cross-eyed, and we get angry at him. And so we look at somebody and they're good looking, and then all of our attachment comes up and we're totally helpless. Yeah? So these are the meditations that help us deal with these kinds of things. Yeah, and you can never listen to the Lamrim too many times. You know, His Holiness has been teaching the different Lamrim texts the last 2 winters, and he's going to be teaching it again this winter in India. And, you know, His Holiness is teaching this text. Who's the audience? Well, besides this whole international group of people, it's the very high lamas, and the Rinpoches, and the abbots, and the teachers, the leading teachers in the monasteries, who go to listen to His Holiness teach Lamrim. You know, these abbots and Rinpoches and realized beings have heard the Lamrim teachings I don't know how many times. You know, 20, 30, 40 times. They go and listen again. They don't say, "Oh, I've heard the Lamrim before. In fact, I even teach it myself. I've got all that down pat. I don't need to go. This stuff is just for beginners. I want the difficult high teachings." None of these outstanding teachers think like that. Yeah? Yeah. It's only the rest of us who are arrogant, who think, "Oh, well, I've heard the Lamrim before. Precious human rebirth? Yeah. You know, yeah, I have a precious human rebirth. What else is new? You know, teach me something high, you know, and complicated, because I'm a fantastic student. I can understand. You know, give me the union of bliss and emptiness today. Yeah, I can do that practice." You know, it's only us that, you know, are full of spiritual arrogance. Yeah, but the great masters all go and listen to these teachings again and again and again, even though they can give the teachings themselves. Okay? And why do they do this? It's not just to be polite to His Holiness, but it's because every time you hear these teachings, they go in at a different level, because our mind has changed. The more we've purified, the more we've accumulated merit. We may hear the exact same words as we heard a year ago or 5 years ago, but all of a sudden these words mean something that to us that they didn't mean a year ago, or they didn't mean 5 years ago. And we sit up straight and we go, "Oh my goodness, is that what they've been saying?" Yeah, and so, you know, we can never listen to these things too many times. So I really encourage people to, I mean, I think, for me, Lamrim saved my life. Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't for Lamrim, I hate to think of what I would be doing right now and what a mess I would have made of my own life and other people's lives. Yeah. So it's really important to take these teachings seriously, and whatever you hear, you know, in the intervening week between, you know, one lesson and the next, to really go through the points of the meditation and think about them one by one and apply them to your life and see if something in your heart changes, if you can gain some kind of experience. And it takes a lot of time to go through all these things. Of course, we all want to sit down and do a meditation, and after 5 minutes, wow, oh yes, now I understand how to rely on the Guru. Oh, now I understand the precious human life. I have it. But, you know, we don't realize that it's all the times of doing the meditation and not having some special experience that create the cause for the time when we do have a special experience. Yeah. And we shouldn't be so attached to having special experiences in our meditation, because they come and they go. Okay, so we should be more interested in habituating our mind to these themes, you know, deepening our understanding, and, you know, just continue to create the cause, you know, and see how They work on your mind and use them in your life when you have difficulties. Okay, so these very precious teachings, I mean, this series that His Holiness has been giving, that we're now coming into the 3rd year, who was it who requested His Holiness to give the Lamrim text? Yeah, it was Kyabje Ling Rinpoche, who his previous life was His Holiness's teacher, and the previous life was also my preceptor. Yeah. So it was, somebody of the quality of Ling Rinpoche that is requesting His Holiness, please, to give these teachings. Yeah. So this really demonstrates the importance, of them. Okay. So I wanted to really emphasize that before we go any further. And then I also wanted to clarify something that's come up a couple of times now about listening to the teachings via the internet. Okay, so I want to clarify, what I was meaning last time. I think I said it, but some people may, not have misunderstood, or perhaps I wasn't so clear. But if you have the opportunity to go to where the teachings are happening live, you should definitely go. Yeah. If you don't, then listen online. Okay? And people have different situations, different financial situations, different living situations. They live in different parts of the world. Yeah. And last time I was saying that if you can go to where your teacher is at some point, either to where your teacher lives, or if your teacher's traveling where he or she is to receive the teachings live, that you get a special kind of, it's different than listening online. Okay? Because when it's live, you're dealing with a live person. You're not dealing with a computer screen. And the live person can see you. Yeah? Whereas all the people listening, you might be lying back with your Pepsi, lying down on your bed, getting up and walking around, chewing gum, reading a comic book in between. I don't know, because I can't see you, But if you're sitting here, I can check if you're reading a comic book, okay? And I can see if you're falling asleep. Yeah. So it that kind of helps us to stay awake and do things. And then also, when you are able to create a relationship with a teacher, then that teacher can actually guide you personally. Yeah. And so, a way to really create that is by meeting the teacher. Okay? So, we all do the best we can. Clearly, if you live in the middle of who knows where, and there's no Dharma centers around, and, you don't have a lot of income, so you can't, go to where your teacher is, then you listen online, and that's perfectly all right. Okay? Or maybe you've never met the teacher. You can still consider that person as one of your teachers if you want to, and have the aspiration to go and meet them at some point. Yeah, and still benefit from the teachings. Just to give you just a little bit of an idea. There's a group of people in Russia who, and the other CIS countries, who are kind of following these teachings, and they've been following other teachings that we've given at the Abbey in the past. And they were following them, and I had never met any of the people. I would receive an email once in a while from the translator telling me what they were doing. I had never met any of the people. But, okay, they're benefiting from the teachings. That's great. I'm happy. Then last winter, when I went to His Holiness's teachings in India, after one of the teachings, a group of people, how were there, maybe about 10 people, they come up and they introduce themselves and they say, oh, we're from Russia, and we came for His Holiness's teachings and we've been following your talks and everything. And even though I wasn't able to talk to them for a long time, it was very clear how sincere and how interested and enthusiastic they were. They had come all the way from Russia to go and hear His Holiness, in South India. And you can tell, just after the teachings, the enthusiasm they had for listening and everything like that. And so even though I didn't know them well, there was a really nice connection that was established because of that, because we at least met one time, and you can get a sense of how these people were, And then they went off and they did Vajrasattva retreat last year, and they're going to do Vajrasattva retreat this year together with meditating on the easy path, and and I hope to meet some more of them this winter. Okay, but this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about, how sometimes just meeting gives a connection that you don't have otherwise. Okay, but then there's other people, there's somebody in Ireland, and different people across the globe who write and have questions, and I've never met them, and we kind of, I do the best to guide them as I can, and maybe one day we'll meet. Okay, clearly I can't give real detailed instructions or a lot of guidance, because otherwise I'd never be able to stand up and leave the computer all day. But there's something that can be, that they're learning and practicing and taking away with them. Okay, so I hope that clarifies things. Okay, so now last time, let's see, I have to go. Let's see. Last time we finished up the meditation on how to rely on a spiritual mentor. Remember? So then we were talking about some of the points to meditate. There was one meditation on how to create respect by seeing the teacher's good qualities, and then a second meditation on how to create a feeling of gratitude by seeing the teacher's kindness. Okay, and their kindness first, because we don't have the karma to be born at the time of the Buddha, and their kindness in teaching us, their kindness in including us in their circle of disciples, and if you're a monastic, taking care of, that you have the requisites, their kindness in guiding us and correcting us when we need correction. We all like to think, oh yes, my teacher will correct me, and what kindness. And then our teacher corrects us and we go, why are they criticizing me? They're always so critical. I'm doing my best. Why don't they give me any credit? And so that's when you get to really look at your mind and the depth of your understanding. Right? Okay. So we also last time talked about how to those previous ones were how to relate to rely on the Guru in terms of our thought, and then we also talked how to rely on the Guru in terms of our action. So first of all, by making offerings, second by offering service, and third by doing the practice. And doing the practice is the best kind of offering. It isn't a thing of offering a lot of material stuff. It's a thing of what our motivation is, and and especially of offering our practice. Okay, so then Okay, so now we're going on to the next meditation, okay, which is contemplating the great potential of freedom and fortune and contemplating the difficulty of attaining those. Okay, so here the preliminaries were as before, the meditation we've been doing at the beginning, and then I read the verse at the beginning of the session today, the general verse about the meditation on precious human life. And then I also read the verse about contemplating the great potential of freedom and fortune. And now I want to get into explaining that. Okay? So in the part that I had read, it said the opportunity to practice the perfect teaching is called freedom. Okay, so Nagarjuna, in his text, A Friendly Letter, he described what freedom meant, and here he specified being free from 4 non-human states and free from 4 human states in which there's a lot of hindrance. Okay, so the 4 non-human states that we're free of in this very lifetime is we're not born in the hellish realm. So this meditation, assumes that we have some faith in rebirth or some conviction in rebirth and some conviction that there's other realms. Okay, so I'm thinking maybe should I pause here and talk a little bit about rebirth, for the benefit of people maybe who don't understand it very much, because otherwise, you hear, well, you're not born in the hell realms, you're not 100 ghosts, you're not an animal, and we go, well, so what? I don't even believe that that's possible. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about rebirth here. So it isn't in the outline, it isn't in the text, because this text was written for Tibetans who in their culture are raised with a view of rebirth. We weren't raised with a view of rebirth, okay? I'm sure some people who are listening in online were raised with a view of rebirth, but, not everybody. So let's talk a little bit about it. Okay, when we talk about the self, I, me, okay, we're talking about a body and a mind having some relationship with each other. And on the basis of the body and the mind having some relationship, we label a person. Okay? If it's only the body, we label a corpse. Okay? If there's a mind stream and the body's moving, then we call it a person. Okay? So the body and mind they're of different natures. Yeah, the body is something material in nature, made of atoms and molecules. You can touch it, you can investigate it with scientific instruments and so on, and measure it in various ways. The mind, or the consciousness, is not material in nature, so you cannot see it or detect it by scientific instruments. Okay? What we call the mind is clarity and awareness. Okay? So clarity in that it can reflect objects, and awareness in the sense that the mind knows objects. Yeah? And so the mind is, when you just sit there and there's this feeling of awareness. That's the mind. Okay? All your emotions are states of mind. All your thoughts are states of mind. Yeah. So all the whole conscious experiential part of us is the mind. Yeah. The body is material in nature. The body itself, without the mind, does not experience anything. A corpse doesn't experience pain or pleasure. It's only when the body and mind are conjoined, and it's the mind that actually is the one that experiences those things. Okay? So they have two different natures. One is form or material, and the other one isn't. Yeah? When they're associated, we say the person's alive. When they separate, they both have their own continuities, but we say that the person has died. Okay? So that's looking forward in terms of the continuity. They all have future continuity. You know, when we die, the body's continuity, it becomes the corpse, and then depending what you do with the corpse, you know, it becomes the worm's lunch, or you burn it and it becomes ashes and it gets recycled in nature, and so on. So you have that continuity of the material stuff. Okay, the mind at the time of death doesn't cease completely in the same way that the body didn't cease completely at death. There's still a continuity to the body, so there's still a continuity of clarity and awareness in the mind, and that mind goes on. And for a mind that is under the influence of ignorance and affliction and polluted karma, then that mind is attracted to another kind of rebirth state, most often another, body, and then it takes rebirth in that new body, and because it's then associated with a body, then you have the person of that new rebirth, So that's looking future, for the future of the mind. Also, there's a continuity in the past, just as our body had a previous continuity. Yeah, the body of today came from the body of yesterday. Yeah, the body of when we were 20, when we were 15, when we were 5. Yeah, when we were an infant. Yeah, our present body and our infant body don't look anything alike, do they? But there's a continuity between them. And I bet if we all brought in our baby pictures from when we were 1 month old, we might not be able to tell who's who. Okay? Yeah, but there's still the continuity of the material substances. That goes back into the womb. When we were a fetus in our mother's womb, there was the body then. That goes back to the time of conception when the sperm and egg met. Okay? And then that goes back into the genes. It depends on the genes of our parents and their parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents. And so there's some kind of genetic continuity, even though the actual body itself, we don't have any of the atoms and molecules from our grandparents or our parents in us. We just have the replicated, genes and chromosomes and so on. Okay, but there's a continuity there, and if you trace it back, you could even trace it back to the Big Bang, and I don't think the Big Bang was the beginning of all matter. It may have been the beginning of this particular universe, but everything that exists had to have a previous cause. So before the Big Bang, there was something before that. Okay, and something before that, and something before that. Because you can't have something that is a result without having a cause. Yeah, and so you go back into infinite causes on the material level. On the level of the mind, too, we trace today's mind, comes from yesterday's mind, and the mind of the day before, and the day before. Okay? When we get back to our mind of 5 years old, it's pretty different than our present mind, although sometimes not. Yeah, but often kind of different than our present mind, but there's the continuity. Yeah. Also, we can trace our mind back into when we were an infant, when we were 1 day old. Yeah, it just came out of our mother's womb. That there was a baby, and that baby had consciousness, didn't it? It experienced pain and pleasure, and it cried when it wanted something, and it, or whatever noise, cooed when it was happy. Yeah, I wanted to say purr, but that wasn't the right, cooed. Okay. So, okay. So, there was some continuity there. And similarly, you can trace the continuity of the baby's mind to in the womb, that fetus also had a mind. And it goes back and back. And of course, just as the body in the womb is totally different than our present body, and you wouldn't even recognize it, our mind stream in the womb is very different than our present mind. We didn't have, so much language there. We didn't have all of our senses functioning. And yet, there was experience. Yeah, there was cognition of some sort in the womb. Then you get to the moment of conception, yeah, and you've been tracing the moment of the mind, you've been tracing mind moments back, moment by moment by moment, to the point of conception. And then the question comes, okay, where did the first moment of consciousness in this lifetime, what was its cause? Because remember, everything that has a continuity, everything that has an effect, has to have a cause. It can't be that the mind was created out of nothing at the moment of conception, or at whatever moment you think, the consciousness entered the body. Yeah, because if there's no cause, there can't be a result. Yeah, and until that point, we've had one moment of mind being the cause of, the next moment of mind. And so it is too when you get to the point of conception. What's the cause of that moment of mind? A previous moment of mind. And so that takes you into the mind before this particular life. Yeah, in the intermediate state, and then into the previous life. Yeah, and so you have this continuity of mind going backwards too, as well as going forwards, simply because of this thing that anything that changes and functions and is produced has to have a cause. And the cause has to be something that is capable of producing that result. It can't be a discordant cause. Okay? So you can't plant roses and get a human body, That's not how it works. You have to have the sperm and egg to get a human body. Similarly, to get the mind stream, you can't have something material that causes the mind stream, because the body and mind have two different natures. One is material, one is not material. Okay? So it has to be a previous moment of clarity and awareness. Okay? And so in thinking this way, then it stretches, our mental capacity to think, there's consciousness, there's life before this particular life. And at the time I die, there's also conscious experience after that. Okay? I think one of the things that makes it difficult for us to think like this is the way we think of our present self is so reified, so rigid, that we can't imagine being anybody but who we are right now. But even when you think about, being a day-old infant, can you imagine? Do you have any idea of what went on in your body and mind when you were 1 day old? Yeah? It's kind of amazing to think that we were ever like that. Isn't it? That we were, do you ever think I was like one of those babies who just sat there on my back and I couldn't do anything for myself, and I couldn't think, and I didn't know any language, and all I knew was to cry when I'm hungry, yeah, or cry when my diaper was a mess. That's all I knew. It's hard to think that we were once like that, isn't it? Yeah, but we were. We were. And, if we live a long life, we'll become an old person, and it's equally difficult to think of ourselves as an old person, isn't it? Yeah? Can you think of yourself as like 80 or 90? And your body doesn't work so well, and you can't stand up straight, and you can't see so well, and you can't hear so well, and you can't think so well. It's hard to even imagine being like that, isn't it? And yet, if we live that long, that's what's going to happen. Yeah. So that's why I say I think one of the things that hinders us in having some feeling about previous and future lives is that we're so attached to the image we have of ourselves right now, even though who we are right now is changing moment by moment by moment by moment by moment and never remaining the same. But we don't see that change, so we have this reified image. Okay? But if we think about it a little bit, yeah, we might get some, feeling for it, especially, asking ourselves, well, everything has to have a cause. So what was the cause of the first moment of consciousness in this body? Yeah, was it the stork? Yeah. Some people may say, well, the consciousness is what is the word they use? It's slipping my mind. Come on, we know. A byproduct, like a byproduct of the body. An emerging property of the body, that's it. It's an emergent property of the body. What in the world does emergent property of the body mean? That the body caused the mind? Then if you say that, then you have to explain how the body caused the mind. How something that's material caused something that is immaterial. How, inanimate organic substance could cause something that has feeling and experience and thought. Yeah. How in the world are you going to establish that kind of causality? Difficult, huh? Yeah. Because no matter how many genes and so ons you trace back, you're not going to come up with clarity and awareness. Yeah. Because in a Petri dish, you may have your Petri dish, and your brain neurons are, clicking away and doing what they do. And somebody may say, oh, well, that's the exact thing. When you have love in your mind, it's, this certain area of your mind and the nerve cells, and this is the electronic pattern going on in the nerve cells, and these are the chemicals between the nerve cells, that are going on when you're having an experience of love. My question is, are those chemicals, is that an electric pulse? Is that conscious experience? If you had a dish out here, with those neurons in it, and the neurons are firing away, and, having whatever chemical reactions they have between them, can you look at that and say, that's love? Yeah? When you say to somebody, I love you, do they say, I want to measure your serotonin and dopamine and your electrical impulses of your brain to know if you really love me? Yeah. When you're angry, do you say, oh, it's just a chemical reaction in my brain, nothing more? Yeah? No. We don't feel like we're just organic substance, do we? Yeah. And you certainly wouldn't look at somebody's brain, yeah? You put their brain out on the table and say, oh, I'm so in love with you. Would you? Yeah? Would you say to that brain, I love you, dear? And say to another brain, I can't stand your guts. No, it's not like that, is it? You know? Conscious experience is different than the brain. Okay? The mind and the brain influence each other. Definitely they influence each other. But they are not the same thing. Okay? And so when you think in this way, then you can establish a previous continuity of mind and also a future continuity of mind. So that's one way to think about rebirth. Another way is to listen to the stories of people who have memories. Okay, and we did find, didn't we find online that video? Okay, so we should actually show it. I had seen a video from many years ago of somebody who was doing research on this, and there was a woman in Australia who remembered being a Dr. James Burns in Edinburgh, wasn't it? Yeah, somewhere in Scotland, and in such and such a century, and this video shows them taking her there. Yeah, and there was a Dr. James Burns enrolled in the school at the time, and she's walking through the school, recognizing everything, until she comes to a certain point and says, no, it wasn't like this when I was there. This hallway went here or there, this room was in a different place. They went down into the archives of the medical school and found the previous floor plans, and sure enough, it was as she remembered. Yeah? So you have these kinds of stories. Yeah? And then you have things like, even with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you know, how did they find him? They sent out a search party. Yeah, and when they search for a new Dalai Lama, they don't go with banners and flags and say, we're looking for the Dalai Lama, because everybody is going to bring their baby and say, it's my kid. Okay? No, they went out as a party of merchants, you know, and it was the custom in old Tibet that merchant parties, they didn't have hotels, so you would stop at a farmhouse and you would stay the night there. Okay? So they were going, they had been to, there's a certain lake in Tibet, Lamo Lotso, that people can go to and have visions of, and so they had done that, and there were indications that the next Dalai Lama would be born in the northwest. Also because the body of the 13th Dalai Lama, when it lay in state, the head turned towards the northwest. Yeah, kind of some kind of indication. So they went in the northwest, in the Amdo area. So they got to this one farmhouse. They tethered their animals, and they wanted to, the very high lamas were dressed as the people who took care of the animals, because the merchants always went in the prayer room, and the animal carers, went in the kitchen, but it was always in the kitchen where the kids were. Okay, so a couple of these lamas go, and they're all dressed up, it's the animal herders. They go in the kitchen. This little boy comes and jumps on one of their laps, and he looks at him and he says, I know you, you're so-and-so. And I met the incarnation of this lama. I can't remember what his name was. It started with an R. Anyway, his previous life, it was his previous life, was the person that this baby came and sat in his line and said, you're so-and-so from Sarah Monastery. And he was wearing the previous Dalai Lama's mala around his neck, and pulled at it and said, "This is mine." Yeah. So he could identify things that belonged to him in previous lives. Yeah, and he could recognize people. Yeah. There was one, some of you may know Yangtze Rinpoche from my Tripa Institute. Yeah, when he was a little boy at Kopan, he would, at night when he was dreaming, he would be reciting scriptures that he didn't memorize in that life. Yeah? So, you hear stories like this, and you think, maybe. Yeah? And there's several stories in India, too, where a child will, when they're very young, they will remember being somebody, belonging to another family in another village. And many times they've taken that child to that village, and the child's been able to identify the members of their previous life's family. Okay? So you hear these stories and you think, okay, well, is there another way to explain them except believing in rebirth? And you see if there's some other way, or if, kind of rebirth seems like a good explanation. And then too, sometimes in our own lives, I don't think many people here are parents, but out online, the people online, many of you may be parents. A couple of you here are parents. Did your kids have personalities when they were born? Yeah? They did? Did you understand my question? When your children were born, yeah, did they have personalities? Yeah. Or were they like blank slates? Or did they have different tendencies? Yeah. Were they exactly the same as babies when they were babies? Yeah, but your two babies, when they were just born, did they act exactly the same? No, yeah. They acted different, didn't they? Yeah?
One is very curious, and the other no.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they have very different personalities. Yeah? Okay. So you can see that, when children are born, they aren't just a blank slate. Yeah? They have tendencies already. They have some kind of personality already. Yeah? Some babies like to be held and cuddled. Other babies maybe not so much. Some babies like music, certain kind of music. Others don't like it. Yeah? So we see that they don't come in as blank slates. Yeah, it's true, isn't it?
The boy is very facility for the music or instrument, but the woman, no, studies.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so your son, very good with music. Your daughter, no, she likes to study and read. Yeah. So you have this kind of thing, yeah? Yeah. And some of these differences show when the babies are very, very young. Yeah? Okay, so we get some idea that, they're coming in with different tendencies already. Yeah?
Looking at us, where did we come from in this life that we turned out to be monastics in a tradition that has nothing to do with it?
Yeah, okay, that's another good question. Look at us, who grew up in a Western society with no Buddhism in our upbringing. Yeah, probably no Buddhism in our ancestors. Yeah, and yet, why did we become Buddhists? and monastics. Yeah? I mean, looking at how we grew up and looking at our genes between nature and nurture, you really can't explain it. Yeah? There's something else. Karmic tendencies is what we call it. Okay? So thinking about these things, about the examples, sometimes thinking about what it could help explain in your life if you believed in rebirth and you believed in karma, kind of why you had certain tendencies or interests from the time you were very young. Now, why your life turned out as it did. If you can explain it by genes and nurture, nature and nurture, fine. But think of, maybe there was another factor, in here too. Okay, so that's talking a little bit about rebirth. The idea behind different realms, when we said, you're not born in the hell realm and so on, is that according to the way we think, we do certain actions, and those actions, leave some trace on our mind stream that makes us attracted to a different kind of body. Now it may seem kind of strange to think that somebody who is a human being in one life could be reborn as an animal. But sometimes we say about somebody who acts, in a way really that's, quite rude and off the wall, we say that person is like an animal, don't we? Yeah, we use that expression. They behave like an animal, or they think like an animal. Yeah. So if somebody acts or thinks like an animal when they're in a human body, could you imagine that at the time of death, maybe their mind stream was attracted to an animal body? Would that make some sense to you? That at at the time of death, that they would get a body that would match their particular state of mind? If they were acting a lot like an animal? Yeah? Or somebody who, took delight in harming other people and had a very vicious mental state? Yeah? Wouldn't it kind of make sense that at the time of death, that person, that vicious mental state that liked pain and anger and suspicion and all, that was attracted towards a rebirth in a hell realm? Yeah? That makes some sense? So, when you think about it this way, that, some people think about the different realms as human states, human states of mind. And that can be helpful in thinking about it, because sometimes our human mind is infatuated with sense pleasure, like the God realm, and sometimes it's craving, like in the hungry ghost realm. But if you think about, a certain mental state, then at the time of death getting a body that reflected the qualities of that mental state, because that person, while they were alive, created many, many actions in that certain mental state. Okay? So in Buddhism, when you're reborn in a certain realm, it's not forever. Yeah, it's due to the karma, and when that karmic energy ceases, then you get reborn. So we can go up and down, and we have gone up and down in samsara many, many times. Yeah, so it's not that you, after this life, get born in one place and stay there for all eternity, but you're there until that lifespan is over, that karmic energy runs out, and then get reborn again in a different thing. Yeah, different kind of body, different experience. Yeah, but there's some kind of mental continuity there. Okay, so maybe we have time for some questions? Yes.
What is the mind when we are meditating?
Where is the mind? They say that, our mind is, associated to our body, with our body when we're meditating. Yeah. So even though our mind is formless, and in one way doesn't really have a place, it is associated with the body, whether our senses are functioning or whether we're meditating. There questions?
Do we have any part in choosing what parents we're born to? And can our choice ever create negative karma? For instance, if we chose without regard for what was in the best interest of our parents?
So do we choose our parents? So we have the idea like we're sitting on a cloud saying, okay, turn in your application now. Yeah, let me read through these applications and I'll see which one I choose. No, it's not like that. We don't, unless you are a very highly realized being, you do not choose your parents. You don't have, the ordinary beings don't have control over this process. It's more just that the karma's ripening and the mind is grasping for something and propelled, and that's what happens.
In that same line, so you have the parents, the child is in a mix of both of their karmas, like the karma of the parents to have this certain child,
Oh, yeah.
the child to have these certain parents.
Right, yeah. So you have some kind of karmic confluence there, that the parents have the karma to have this being as their child, and this child has the karma to have those two beings as their parents. Yeah, at least for this lifetime.
Yeah, I find it very funny. Like, me and my brother are both very interested in meditation and philosophy, and our parents are both very non-religious, middle class, like people, and it's like very different. People always like, how are you two? How are you your parents?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes, parents and children are very different. Yeah. You wonder, how did these kids get born to those parents?
Kids in the same family.
Yeah, the kids in the same family. So different. So different.
Okay, we have 5 questions.
Okay.
First, how does our mind pass down from one life to another?
The mind just continues with one moment of consciousness producing the next moment of consciousness. Okay? At the time of death, our mind goes into a very subtle state. Yeah, and that extremely subtle mind leaves the body, and then when it, is reborn into another gross body, it becomes a grosser level of mind that can then, see and hear and taste and smell and touch. But it's just the process of one moment of clarity and awareness producing the next moment. Yeah, there's not a person, there's not a self, there's not a soul, there's not a truly existent mind stream.
So that's another question. What is the difference between soul and mind?
Difference between soul and mind is soul is something that is really you. The idea of a soul is like a permanent thing that is the essence of the person, that doesn't change, that goes from one life to the next. The mind is not the soul. The mind is just clarity and awareness that's changing moment by moment, whereas the soul doesn't change. And there's nothing in the mind that is the person. Yeah, the person is simply labeled independence on the mind, but the mind is not the person. There's nothing in the mind that makes us some kind of special, this is me, the essence of me-ness. Okay, so this is one of the major points that distinguishes the Buddha's teachings, is that most other religions say that there's some kind of permanent soul, that goes from one life to the next. In Buddhism we say no, such a thing doesn't exist at all.
In what sense differs from lifetime to lifetime is only the very subtle mind stream? How can the connection we feel with certain pieces in this lifetime feel so strong?
Okay, so if there's only this continuity of one moment of mind producing the next, how come in a new life you have, sometimes you meet different Dharma teachers and you have a very strong connection, or you meet different people and you have a strong connection? That has to do with the karma we created in a previous life. Especially when we meet Dharma teachers, if we have a strong connection with them, chances are that we knew them in a previous life and we probably made strong prayers to be able to meet them again in this lifetime. And that's why in this lifetime we always, when you have really good Dharma teachers, you always make prayers to meet them again in future lives.
Could you say more about the clarity aspect of the mind and how can we increase clarity in our mind?
Okay, so clarity here, when we're talking about the mind, simply means the ability to reflect an object. Yeah, just the ability to be conscious. Doesn't necessarily, that's the meaning of clarity there. Yeah, the kind of clarity that we want to increase in our mind is a different kind of clarity. It's the clarity that comes when the negativities have been purified, and when we've, heard teachings and developed wisdom. Okay, also when we develop concentration, the mind gets a lot clearer. When does consciousness start in a newborn? They usually say at the moment of conception. Although I remember, one time a group of people, Westerners, were asking His Holiness about it, because now you have the sperm and the egg coming together in a Petri dish. Yeah, and so does the consciousness enter at that point or not? And His Holiness said, kind of, we have to ask somebody who has clairvoyance to tell us about that. Yeah, but usually they say it's at the time of conception. How can an animal become a human? It's difficult, because as an animal it's very difficult to create positive karma. But this is why we invite our cats to hear teachings, and why we circumambulate around the Buddha in the garden, and why we say mantras and prayers so they can hear, because that way we put good imprints on their mind stream. Yeah, so that helps them. But basically, somebody who's born as an animal this life, in a previous life, was a human being, and hopefully created some virtue in that previous human life. And even though that virtue didn't ripen at the time of death of that human life, they were propelled into an animal body, that good karma is still on the mind stream. Yeah, and so then in the death in the animal, if the animal is hearing prayers and mantra and so on and so forth, that can help nurture that previous good karmic seed created when they were a human to ripen, and then that animal can be reborn as a human being again. Yeah, but it's difficult, and that's why, when we get into this meditation on the precious human life, and we see that we aren't in one of those lower or unfortunate realms right now, we see wow, how incredibly fortunate I am, because if I were born there, very difficult to get out. Yeah. So we don't want to get reborn there. Would a peaceful death determine a better rebirth? Hopefully, you know, if the mind is peaceful at the time of death. So that's why, you know, better not to have the television going on in the hospital when you're dying, or people in the room sobbing and crying or arguing or whatever. Better to be peaceful, because that helps the virtuous karma to ripen. But the thing is to create the virtuous karma when you're alive. You know, people all the time say to me, what can I do to help my relative that's deceased or that's in the process of dying? And I always tell people, the best time to help your relatives is when they're alive. Not when they're dying, not after they're dying. If you love them while they're alive, encourage them to be generous. Encourage them to keep good ethical conduct. Don't encourage them to lie or cheat on behalf of the family. Yeah, encourage them to go to Dharma talks or to be a kind person. Yeah, do that when they're alive. That's the best way to help them, because that way they create the virtuous karma. How does karma continue with the mind into the next life? Okay. There are some people who say that there's karmic seeds, and then there's other people who say there's these having ceased, or the jigpa. Okay? So, the idea of a karmic seed, an analogy, and this is only an analogy, so don't reify it, is if you have a river flowing from upstream to downstream, okay? The river is changing every moment, isn't it? There's no person, there's no thing there that is the river, in the same way that there's no person there that in the mind stream. And yet there's some continuity of the river in the same way that there's a continuity of the mind stream. If you drop a leaf in upstream, that leaf's going to float downstream. Okay? So if you think of that, you know, you create some karma in one life, and it creates some kind of karmic seed, and that just associates with the mind as it goes into the next life. That is only a very rough analogy. Don't think of karmic seeds as something material. Okay? And because karmic seeds are also in constant flux, and the mind that's carrying them are in constant flux. And there isn't some thing on the mind stream that you can pick up and say, oh, there's the karmic seed. Okay? Because the mind stream isn't visible. Yeah. And the karmic seed is, sometimes what they say as an analogy for a karmic seed is when you have a seal. Yeah? You have a seal, so there's an image on here, and you stamp it on here. But has anything gone from here to here? No. Yeah? There was something here that got stamped on here, but there wasn't anything that went from here to here. Yeah. So they say that the karmic seed is kind of like that. Yeah. In terms of the prasangika, then they say it's this having ceased, that, you know, the having ceased of an action that carries the that has the potency to bring the result.
What does the Dharma say about deja vu?
What does the Dharma say about deja vu? I've never heard it explicitly addressed, you know, and it could be, I mean, scientists talk about deja vu, I'm sure they have explanations. And Dharma might say, well, maybe you're remembering something from a previous lifetime or something like that. Could be, it's hard to say. Okay. Yeah.
The stories about how the mind stream is like when you look on your body and you enter the womb, is it because you have experience it? Could remember that, or?
Okay, so when the mind stream enters the body, again, it's not this thing that you're sitting up there with all your senses working and your mind fully attentive, saying, okay, now who's going to be my parent? You look good. I think I'll get reborn there. No, it's not like that.
I only wonder, where the knowledge is coming from.
What knowledge?
About how you enter the womb.
How this whole process. Okay. I'm sure it must come from the yogis who have clairvoyant experience, and they're the ones who describe how this works. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Then we can offer the mandala and dedicate. So think about this between now and next time, okay? And really make some examples for yourself and do some meditation on this. See if it makes some sense to you.